Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I would like to talk to you about what interview slot you should select if you're given some options. Before we jump into that, if you're looking forward to hearing about which slot you should strategically select for your upcoming interview, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can continue to receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every week. First, my overall thoughts on which interview slot you should select is that it really shouldn't matter. Every candidate should be given equal consideration regardless of which interview slot they select. So if you're in a position where you maybe got the email late or you're just now able to click to schedule your upcoming interview and there's only one slot remaining and you can see what other slots were available, don't be too hard on yourself. It is the goal, at least in my opinion, of interviewers to give every candidate equal consideration for a job. However, this isn't always the case, and there's some psychology to determining which interview slot you should select. The TLDR version of this is go first or go last. My recommendation is to go first. So let's dive a little bit deeper. I will link to the research in the description box below if you're interested, but the research demonstrates that the things that are most memorable to people are things that come first, last, often, or are most unique. So those are 4 different characteristics or qualities that could be playing a role in how interviewers feel about each interviewee. So the most memorable things or people in this case are the ones who come first, the ones who come last, ones who are extremely unique, and things that are repeated. Now, of those 4 things, what might apply to you when it comes to job interviews? Probably not repeated. It's unlikely that in a single interview stage, there will be any sort of repetition. It's unlikely that you will have multiple first round interviews with the same company for the same position. You might have multiple interviews, but that's not what we're talking about. So repetition is not something that we're considering with this interview slot selection process. Uniqueness is also something that you probably don't fully control. Each of us as individuals are unique with what we bring to the table for each interview. You would ideally determine how you are the most unique so that you can stand out among other candidates. But we don't control that. That is in the eye of the beholder. So the interviewers will likely determine who is the most unique for a position. The things that you choose to share during your interview will help demonstrate how you're unique. But again, that uniqueness doesn't actually play into which interview slot you should select. So then we come to first and last. So you can either select the first interview slot or the last interview slot to be the most memorable of all the interview slots. Now again, my disclaimer is that you shouldn't beat yourself up if you didn't select the first or the last and you get one of the middle slots. Because in a perfect world, every candidate is given equal consideration for the position. However, if you want to be most memorable, you want to select the first slot or the last slot. My recommendation is to select the first slot. The reason for this is because everyone who comes after you will be compared to you, rather than you being compared to other people. Selecting the first interview time is your opportunity to really knock it out of the park and be the competition that everyone else is fighting against. Now, if the first slot isn't available, then pick the last slot. That's my recommendation. Now, if either of those slots aren't available, then you just pick whichever one you think will work best for your schedule. There are some other considerations that you may want to keep in mind. For example, is your interview going to be the last interview of the day, a 4 p.m. time slot? If so, the energy level of that interview may be lower. So it will be on you to bring that energy level up. The interviewers are likely exhausted from their busy day at work, and you might even be exhausted from your busy day at work, plus an interview on top of this. The other time frame that might be a little bit dicey is right before lunch. You likely don't want to select the interview slot that's right before lunch because everyone will be looking at their watches, thinking about what they're going to eat for lunch, hoping that this interview will just wrap up quickly so they can get on to eating. So with that in mind, Try not to pick the last interview slot of the day or the interview slot right before lunch. Try to pick the first interview slot of the day, or one that's maybe mid-morning, that is before the lunch interview slot. Now, there hasn't been any research that I'm aware of that has gone into which specific interview slot will give the best outcome, because there's a lot of other variables at play. But you can do yourself a huge favor and give yourself a leg up compared to the other candidates by selecting an interview slot that will help you be remembered in the minds of the interviewers. So ideally, you pick the first interview slot or the last interview slot. If either of those aren't available, you select any of the other interview slots, but try to stay away from the last interview slot of the day or an interview slot that is right before lunch. If you have any experience with this, please let us know in the comments. Have you taken the very first or last interview slot and had good or poor results? What about middle of the day, end of day, lunchtime interviews? Let us know your experience in the comments box below. I do my best to get back to each commenter individually, but if I'm not able to do that, just know that your comments will likely help someone else in the future who is engaging in something similar. If you found this video helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can continue to receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every week. If you are looking to work with someone one-on-one to improve your interview strategies, maybe you've got a lot of interviews, but none of them are actually ending up with a job offer. Or let's say that you are submitting application after application, but no interview offers are coming through, and you'd like some help diagnosing what might be going on. If you are someone who's looking for more of that one-on-one support, please consider reaching out to me today. I have limited spots available each week to help people with their interview strategy, to help people with their job application strategy, and more. So if this is something that would interest you, please check out the link in my description box below. I've linked to my website where you can look at my services, you can check out my pricing, and you can even schedule with me directly. I've also linked to my email in the description box below, so you can reach out to me directly and set up a session that way as well. As I mentioned, spots are limited, so please reach out to me as soon as possible so that we can get something on the books today to help you have a successful job search and interview. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.